We've had a lot of activity happening within the banking sector. We saw that sector as a whole falling back. But as I mentioned, a few of the bigger players managing to back the overall negative trend. What's your approach towards the banking space right now?
Hi, Alishia, morning. In the banking space, a lot of things are happening at the moment. Most of the activity is in the intervened banks, and we're seeing a lot of downside pressure on those names. But for the the cleaner banks, we are largely more interested in First, Zenith, and Skybank. Those are top picks at Renaissance.
Just taking a look at some of the rationale behind that. I mean, of course, First Bank has long been a firm favorite within the market. What are some of the influencing factors or the factors you're taking into consideration influencing your investment decision there?
For First and Zenith, there's a fundamental thing which investors or the market as a whole should not lose track of, and that's what's happening in the interbank market. Okay, you find out that for the first time since the crisis, we're actually seeing interbank rates move back to 13%. Okay, and you find out that for these banks which have a relatively higher portion of their asset mix in interbank assets, that bodes very largely well for their net interest margins. And speaking to these banks, you find out that in a market where there's tightening liquidity, they have largely been able to keep their cost of funds flat. These banks have not increased their term deposit rates over the past few months. And if anything at all, they've been increasing lending rates by a few basis points in response to market trends, which is the logical expectation when these kind of things happen.
Of course, leaning naturally is towards, the more healthy banks within the Nigeria space, especially at a time where there have been big question marks around the entire recapitalization program, pertaining to rescued players. What's your reading of that scenario and how it's all been unfolding?
The most interesting thing happening now is 30 September is an effective deadline. These banks either recapitalize or they let AMCON do the recapitalization or they are liquidated. For us, we believe, and we also, you actually find it strange that a bank which is technically insolvent is trying to claim some value. We understand the fact that probably there's some low bidding happening by some of the willing investors, but that notwithstanding, we believe that if the opportunity presents itself, this bank should actually take it on board. Okay, 30 September is effective. The timeline is very short. It's just a couple of months down the line. Now, if anything at all, the deals might not be as attractive as they were a couple of months ago. We believe that if 4 or 5 of these banks get recapitalized, I think Analyst has done a good job in terms of recapitalizing the system. A few banks falling along the wayside, I think is not a bad sign for this system. He's done a good job.
Of course, Adesoji, as I touched on earlier, we had very optimistic statements coming through from both Intercontinental and Springbank yesterday with regards to where they stand within that recapitalization process, and both those share prices falling back close enough to the maximum 5% yesterday nevertheless. So what did you make of those announcements? Because it seems that the market is still quite skeptic at this stage.
A couple of things happened yesterday. The biggest one being that the court case which hindered the signing of a transaction implementation agreement between Access and Intercontinental, which was the case by Akingbola, which placed an injunction on the deal. It was set aside by the court yesterday. And what happened was Intercontinental came out with a statement that it would quickly try and conclude its deal with Access, which we believe is positive for Access Bank, which is looking to do this deal. Okay, for Springbank, the most interesting thing from what the announcement made is the fact that we still have foreign investors showing interest in this recapitalization phase. ICC Bank of India and 1 or 2 private equity investors, showing interest. ICC, funny enough, is the second biggest bank in India. It has presence in quite a number of countries, probably about 20 at the moment. So for the system as a whole, it's just refreshing to hear that there's still foreign interest. First Rand sterling fell along the way. Any other international interest is falling along the way. So I think, if foreign interest eventually happens, it's positive for this banking system.
Yeah. In terms of factors influencing sentiment, that was exactly the next question. I mean, what kind of role do you see this foreign investor interest playing, and what are the chances of government approving this? Does it matter whether it's a local player that's taking on an unhealthy bank or a foreign player?
It's really relevant. A foreign bank, a local bank. For the Nigerian banking system, we have just a few international banks participating, and if you compare Nigeria versus other large emerging markets, you find out that the level of foreign bank participation in this country, is really nothing close to what's happening in Brazil or India or China. So it's I believe that a foreign interest will be approved by the CBN, and if you remember, Sanusi in South Africa mentioned that they do not see a reason why if First Round agrees a deal with Sterling, they would not, CBN would not approve the deal.